Okay, so Yu-Gi-Oh! Cross Duel officially comes out worldwide in the next few days. It's been out for about 45 or 48 days, something like that, in parts of the world like Canada and Hong Kong. If you were like me and you got to change your region, you've been playing the whole time. I have, and I have several videos on it. But the importance of that is, while we talk about the best ace monsters currently to choose from in Yu-Gi-Oh! Cross Duel to get started off strong, we also have some experience. I have some experience playing with, against, and with and against a lot of these characters or monsters here. So the first thing you need to know about this game, so I'm gonna go as quickly as I can, but please, if you're impatient, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I'm gonna try, okay? But I will tell you, probably for a general sense, Blue Eyes is the one you want to choose, okay? Just for the general sense, Blue Eye is probably the best one because of his effect being extremely powerful. It's only one sentence, but it's extremely powerful. But there's a lot of nuance when it pertains to each one, so if you understand or you want to wait, just please listen through as much as you can, like I said. So the first thing to mention is ace is very important because ace monsters always start off in your hand. No, you don't only have to use one of these characters or monsters. You could choose whichever one you summon from the gacha as your ace monster, and it doesn't have to be a UR rarity either. It can be whatever. So if you want to have a specific card start off in your hand, you can do that. They can also be in your deck. Like, say I choose Red Dragon Archfiend as my ace, I can still put Stardust Dragon in my deck as just a tribute summon monster. That works as well. You can kind of do stuff like that if you want to, for whatever reason. There's not a ton of reason to do that. Most of the time, you're only going to be tributing for your ace monster based on the decks you're going to build. But I mean, if you wanted to put some of these other monsters in your deck, you can do that. Also, in PvP, this is different for different modes, but for PvP specifically, non-ace monsters, I believe, can only have one skill that's actually active, the very first skill slot. If you don't know, this is a game where there is a grid, basically, where you unlock skills. The skills are effects. If you notice, they're all normal monsters here, but if I were to click them and they show me these effects, that's because they actually pick up effects as you basically equip them to the monsters. There's no default effects. No, this is not Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, in terms of the actual game. It's a very, very different game than anything we have on the market. It's very different than Speed Duel. It's extremely different. Think like Nightmare Troubadour, for example, if you remember that game. Anyways, they can equip these, and only your ace monster can have more than one in a PvP match. So that's part of a reason to why ace is important, and you want to be focusing on that and building your themes and strategies around your ace monsters. So as you can see, there is a wide range of effects that these monsters have themselves, but there's also a wide range of effects in general in the game that different monsters will have access to. So when it comes down to building your decks, the game will give you the ability to do suggested. You can also filter monsters that you own or don't own that have different effects to build out certain strategies. Like, for example, if you need monsters that have a pendulum summon effect, for Odd Eyes, you can do that. You can sort out and pull him up or pull up monsters that have that. So, like, it's just interesting, okay? Monsters don't have anything until you build them up, though. That's the point. You have to build them up. They don't have anything by default. Not a single monster has anything by default. So, that being said, I've already talked about the perks of ace monsters and what they mean, basically. They start off in your hand is the most important thing. But your deck is most of the time going to be built around them. So, I personally chose Multistrike Dragon. He is really, really fun. So here's his master skill. While on the field, all of your monsters gain 1 extra attack. Extra attack is very simple. When attacking directly, gain 500 attack. Now, I will note, if your monster has extra attack, which he will give them, but monsters can have this by default. Like I was saying, not every monster can have this, but there are going to be certain ones that can have extra attack by default. Not by default, but you can work them up and put it on them without needing him, is my point. Anyways, if your monster has this, they gain 500 attack when attacking directly. Short and sweet. That attack doesn't fall off. It's not just for that battle phase only. It consistently goes up by 500 if they're not dealt with. So it's really, really powerful, and it stacks very crazily. And then if your monster has 2 extra attacks, they gain Pierce. Pierce is the same as the card game. Basically, you will be able to attack your opponent even when you have even if you attack a defense position monster in their monster zone or guardian monster zone. So basically, you deal direct damage if you have Pierce. You can understand why extra attack and Pierce are crazy together, because basically you get to a point where your monsters have a really high attack, they gain more attack, and if they have Pierce, if they have that alongside it, they're just dealing direct damage. And I get monsters that are like 5,000, 7,000, 8,000 attack. It gets really crazy, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is for a game like this. But the downside of him is that he can't sustain. Most of the time he has one really big monster that's not himself most of the time, but like something else out there that's dealing damage. And then if they're dealt with by like a spell or trap, then you kind of gone all in. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to recover from that. And once you've played your ace monster, most of the time you're pretty much screwed. That's your, if they get destroyed, that's your all-in gambit, if you will. So you have to be aware of that. Next, I want to talk about, after him, we'll talk about Dark Magician. So Dark Magician, he has a burn style. There's another burn card here too that we'll talk about in a minute. If you activate a spell card, inflict 300 damage to all other players. So the thing is, you have 20 card decks. You have to have a good portion of monsters to defend yourself at minimum, and you also need to be able to play this guy with tribute. So like, you have to have a ratio of a certain amount. So you have to still have an offensive playstyle to a degree. These types of monsters that rely solely on burns are not really good individually. They'll be good in tag format, I think, and you can only really do tag, though, for the record, in like an actual like casual match. I believe you could set up with like a friend and play tag, but otherwise it's always you versus 3 other players, or you in raid duels with 3 other allies, which I guess that kind of makes sense too. But like, you're not bringing Dark Magician to raid format, I guess. But anyways, so he'd be good with somebody alongside you that can be the aggressor, maybe just defend yourself, but you're not dealing enough damage with spells to really make it worthwhile. So it's not the best ability. They're only showing us his master skill and all these master skills, but some of them will have other skills that are really good too that I'd have to point out, but I'm just going based off of master skills here. So let's move on and talk about Blue Eyes. So Blue Eyes, on the other hand, this is an extremely powerful skill. It's very universal. When he's played, when he's summoned, select and destroy one monster, you can clear off anything off the board. Also, he's got that whopping 3,000 attack, which is a lot in this game, because your attack threshold and defense threshold basically are almost like life points, if you will, for your monsters individually. Every time you deal damage or you attack another monster, whether they're in attack or defense position, that amount that they had gets subtracted from your total. Say like I attack like Celtic Guardian, and he's got 1,400 attack, and we're both in attack mode, and assuming he doesn't have like a detonate skill or whatever, any other skill that would further reduce my attack, I would wind up after that battle with 1,600 attack. So you see what I'm saying? It gets subtracted. Now that also is a good thing, because it would be really hard to deal with monsters otherwise, but you can also utilize your defensive position and also basically get like a second life threshold, if you will, of 2,500. You can maybe deal with somebody, get them weaker, because if in defense mode, if he attacked my Blue Eyes White Dragon with that Celtic Guardian, it would reduce 1,400 for both of us, and he would go down to 0, and I would just be able to switch to attack and just kill him. You don't deal life point damage unless you attack directly, though, so it's kind of a moot point. But this guy, nonetheless, having those stats in general is very good. But the board clear of anything is ridiculous. And monsters generally don't have immunities. There are some that can grant it. We'll look at some in a minute. But board clear is crazy. This guy is very powerful, so probably the best one, just in a general sense, on the list, and the safest choice to choose. Neos is interesting. So he has this playstyle, him and his deck. He uses also like cards like the Ojamas and stuff like that. There's going to be an Ojama here, but like the green, yellow, black. He has this playstyle where when he's destroyed, he returns to your hand. So let's read it. When destroyed in battle, this monster returns to the hand and gains Speedy Summon and Super Speed. Speedy Summon is crazy. It means the monster can be summoned with 1 less summon material, so just 1 tribute. By the way, there are double tributes. Like I think Dark Resonator has it in like the actual TCG, and that monster's in this game with that same skill. There are monsters that not a lot of them. There are monsters that have a skill that lets them act as 2 tributes, though. Anyways, Can be summoned with 1 less, but the caveat is you lose 1,000 attack and defense. The double of that is efficient summon. Efficient summon means you can be summoned with 1 less, so you can basically... So speedy turns into efficient. So this kind of was a point I meant to mention more with Multistrike. But monsters can have stacks of these, okay? So if a monster has more than 1 ability, certain things happen, or they'll change. So like, if you notice, Multistrike says if your monster has 2 extra attacks, they gain Pierce. If they only have 1 extra attack, they're not gaining Pierce, which means that since he gives them one stack of extra attack, that means that the monster already needed to have it by default, which if you're in PvP, it needed to be set in your skill slot 1. But that's why the attack stats stack so much, because they'd pick up 1,000 attack instead of 500. So like those abilities stack, right? So with this guy, that turns to efficient summon, which means he could just be played outright, but he doesn't lose another 1,000. So he would just become a 4 cost. Well, wait, 1 less. Yeah, he would just be just a normal play, basically a 4 or lower monster with 1,000 less only. He also gains super speed, which is really crazy in this game. So boosts movement speed by 50%, and the double of super speed is hyperspeed, and hyperspeed is double on that, so 100%. So movement speed is crazy too, because it's how quickly you can traverse the lane you're in. So you can outright just dodge confrontation. This is why the attack reduction on him isn't a big deal. It only really matters when if you get to the very end of the lane and they've got like a defense position monster or something like that. Attack, I guess, counts too. But if they got a monster waiting for you, but you can dodge the cross lane battles and stuff like that. And it's pretty wild, man. So he's pretty crazy. And then again, when he's destroyed, he just constantly respawns basically. So Neos is probably the best monster for raid dueling pretty easily. And he is definitely an S tier monster in the game, period. The way he plays is ridiculous. Just constantly, like I said, respawning. It just more or less comes down to the deck that you've got around him. So like I said, Blue Eyes is S tier too. It's just he's extremely safe and a very powerful monster. Neos plays very differently, as you can imagine, but is also S tier and very good for his own reasons. And they're probably the best too, just in my opinion, because like some of these monsters, like Ojama King, I guess, are good in like tag duels, or good in certain situations, or good in really, really specific stuff, and they can be pretty crazy, but not all the time, maybe not consistent. It's really interesting how the game plays. So first and foremost, 3,000 defense is incredible, but also, like I said, it can be whittled down. Like I explained with Blue Eyes, the defense isn't a constant. It does get whittled down anytime a monster goes into battle. Same goes for attack, obviously. When summoned, select an opponent. They cannot summon monsters to any monster zone until the end of the next turn. This is toxic, okay? It's toxic AF. Not being able to summon a monster until the end of the next turn is ridiculous, okay? So most of the time, I mean, it takes place on the turn he's summoned to, but you're not playing anything after this effect resolves for that turn, unless you have like a monster reborn, which you're not going to have most of the time. It just kind of depends, I guess, but you're not playing anything else. He just locks your zones, and then the following turn happens, he'll lock your zone. So he could really freeze somebody out. There's some good strategy to this. Like, say you feel like somebody, like you're going for the win or whatever the case is, you play him, and then his effect resolves, and it's like the very end of the duel, you can play a monster there. If they don't have a trap, you're good. You're going to get that direct attack. You're going to just win. You know what I'm saying? Like there are strategies to this guy. I just feel like with him, he's really good. All these monsters are good. I just feel like it's kind of easy to deal with him, only because he's forced to stay in defense mode the whole time. So unlike Blue Eyes, a character you can kind of, like I said, play defensively, then switch to offense, things like that, which, by the way, he could just get popped by Blue Eyes. He could get popped by Red Dragon as well. We'll look at Red Dragon Archfiend in a little bit. He's not terribly hard to deal with. And then also, it's kind of interesting how the rest of your deck is built. He doesn't really have a deck in particular that's like crazy suited to him, because of the monster effects, the way they resolve in this game. But like your other monsters have to really be able to go offensive. You cannot play this game defensively. You deal no life point damage. You have to be able to play offensively. So he's probably a character that's really, really good. Just like someone else we talked about earlier, like Dark Magician, who'd be really good in a tag duel format, but he's just okay in my opinion. But again, I will acknowledge that freezing somebody out is toxic. It's crazy. And there are situations where that can win you a game or steal you a game or two. I just feel like you probably won't win all that often. It's one of those things that probably sounds a little better on paper. So, master skill for Stardust is while in the field, all your monsters gain level 3 or lower. Lower monsters gain reincarnation. Stardust. I've never lost to a Stardust. But he's fun to use. So here's the deal. When destroyed, this monster is returned to your hand with all of its skills negated. So this is something very similar to the Neos playstyle. Like I said, Neos has monsters like this is good in like raid format, whatever. Just like I was saying with Neos, it's kind of the same idea. It's just instead of Neos giving it to himself, which like I said, both this guy and Neos, I guess more so Neos has monsters that have this effect outright, the reincarnation effect, like the Ojamas. I guess with this guy, you kind of don't need that. But the problem with these while in the field effects is that the monster can just get popped. They can't live forever because their attack and defense will go down and they'll get easier and easier to kill every time they battle. That's just how the game is. And then also there are monsters like Blue Eyes or whoever that could just pop them, that could be dealt with via spell or trap. So like the while in the field effects, and I understand that I chose a monster that has that too with Multistrike, but the while in the field effects are just, they just don't seem as good as the ones that can consistently or immediately proc because there's a whole other layer to it. But nonetheless though, it is really good to be able to have your monsters that are 3 or lower consistently returning. But playing all of those lobies, you've got to be able to play more and more and more and overwhelm an opponent with just that overall. But I feel like that playstyle is probably just better suited to Neos and cycling himself back over. So it just almost feels like a watered down version of that deck that you would want to run with Neos. But you get more flexibility because Stardust would give it to other monsters and he doesn't get weaker as well as a result. But it just, to me, doesn't seem like a monster you should be choosing. But I need to see more of him because I haven't lost to him, but I used him a little bit, but I feel like there's more potential for Stardust, and some of these characters can get better, or monsters can get better as more cards come out. Next is Red Dragon. He's pretty nuts. he's pretty nuts, man. So the first thing to mention is he's got a very similar effect to the card game. At the end of the battle phase, destroy all defense monsters. So notice it says all. It doesn't just say like the ones you're against or whatever. He's gonna pop every defense monster on the board. Whoo boy. So you better watch out for this guy. It is at the end of the battle phase. It's just a consistent every turn thing. Just pop all defense monsters. This guy is a menace. So like cards like this are like Blue Eyes, but more like this hard counter monsters like Ojama King that want to just sit in defense mode. And there are other monsters on this list that kind of want to sit in defense mode, but he's got those high stats too. It's not really much else I need to say. He's very simple, very easy, but very aggressive monster. So very, very good. We have Utopia here. When destroying an opponent's monster in battle, gain attack buff ×3. So the weird thing about Utopia is he has to destroy a monster to gain this effect, which literally leaves him in a position where he's vulnerable after having his stats reduced by already having a battle. It's just kind of a weird foresight that they had with him, or oversight. When battling an opponent's monster, it loses 300 attack. So he's going to get 3 debuffs so basically 900 attack anytime he battles, which is a really, really, really good effect. Especially one of them is good because it makes a lot of difference. You can kill them easier, you lose less, blah, blah. 3 is crazy. So I get why they kind of restricted it, but he's already going to be weaker, and he'll just obviously, like every other monster, just get weaker and weaker. But it seems like to me he's going to be at an easier threshold to get weaker, and he's also susceptible to defense type monsters. He can't battle them. He can't be an offensive monster versus a defense, because by that point this effect is completely worthless. So if somebody just stonewalls him with something like Ojama King, he's just stuck. He can't do anything to that guy. So you can kind of see where, and that's just one monster with a high defense. There's more. You can kind of see where he's not that great, especially because the limitation on his effect. Okay, Leviathan Dragon. While on the field, all of your monsters gain 1 focus. 100 more attack is gained from your monster's focus as well. So they gain focus and they get an extra 100 basically. Focus is really powerful too. At the start of the battle phase, gain 200. I do not believe this falls off. It kind of reads like it would, but I don't think it falls off like the extra attack. I need to go back and double check. But still, gaining 300. By the way, if it doesn't fall off, this is pretty crazy. But again, the stats are hurting him. 0 defense Whoo boy, but it's not a lot of things that can change you to defense mode, to be fair, and maybe you can use stuff that prevents your change. So that's also an option too, which I also can apply to any monster, right? 2000 attack too, but again, while on the field. So he's a monster that's very support. He has to get carried. You want to kind of keep him out of battles. However, the only way to keep a monster actually out of battle is to either not play them or to have them in defense mode, which you definitely don't want to have this dude in defense mode if you can avoid it. And then outside of that, your monsters around him are going to have to do all the battling pretty much. But he also does gain focus, okay? That's the caveat to him that I don't want to like forget to mention. So if it doesn't fall off, which I don't think it does, he is actually extremely powerful after he's gotten a couple of attacks through. Again, the downside to this is that the way the game works with focus is if it doesn't fall off, it doesn't really matter because they're going to, if they're battling anyway, if they're not direct attacks, if they're battling, they're still going to lose. So it's you lose some, gain some, lose some, gain some type deal. So you can kind of stave that off a little bit longer. But he seems like another monster that's kind of really, really good in practice. So Odd Eyes here is interesting because he's our first monster that actually has a unique summon requirement. Notice we've looked at like synchros. They didn't mention anything about synchro summoning. It doesn't really matter. So you can play this guy with just regular tributes if you want, but you don't get his effect. So no reason to do that. I guess maybe if you need a beat stick, you can do that. When summoned, if summoned using the pendulum scale, which is effects that monsters will have, there are certain monsters that have it, you should understand by now. All of your monsters gain 800 attack and defense and gain immunity to destruction. You see how powerful this is? And it's, by the way, it's an immediate resolve. It's not a while in the field type of effect. Wow. Very, very powerful. So the thing about this is all of your the reason why this is such a powerful skill is because you're probably not going to have much on the board if you're going to use 3 slots to do a pendulum summon, which you only have 3 slots. The only other monsters this would apply to are monsters that have already started down the lane, which obviously you could have like, you know, numerous monsters, but that's the first thing to mention. So there's a slight limitation on it, but otherwise there's really no drawbacks to this guy outside of the fact that you've got to have 3 cards. That's another thing. 3 specific cards, not just 3 of like all the other monsters that are like 2 tribute monsters. Basically, you still really need 3 cards to do that. You know what I'm saying? Them and 2 other cards. This guy starts off in your hand. You still got to dig for your 2 specific pendulum cards. You could probably have a few different actual pendulum monsters, but nonetheless, though, you still got to dig for them. But 800 attack and defense is pretty wild. And then the immunity to destruction is really, really wild. So like having him this is why I was saying like having monsters that are like weaker or like stuck in defense mode or whatever the case is, it's good to have immunities on those monsters or find a way to apply immunities to those monsters because it would help you tremendously. So he's a really, really powerful monster overall. I don't think he's S tier. I've only pointed out a couple of them being S tier so far, and the reason because of that is because it's like you're S tier and then you're kind of just a little bit below that. Otherwise, all of the other monsters outside of S tier are pretty equivalent, unless I just outright say that they're pretty bad. If you use an effect here for Bloom Diva, if you use an effect to gain life points, all of your monsters gain defense equal to the life points. Okay, I can already tell you how this is going to go. Defense equal to the life points gained. 100 more LP is gained from your healer monsters. So healer is a skill that you gain 200 LP. Spoiler, healer is irrelevant in most modes. The reason why, No, I'm looking at this wrong. There's two healer ones. I was thinking about the one where you go down the lane and you heal an ally. Assist, right? Assist heal. No, this is fine. So your monsters recover 300 with healer, I guess. Unless there's stronger monsters you can play that have this is kind of worthless though. You need to play some stronger monsters. There's probably some that have it, to be fair. But this monster in and of itself is generally really weak, and it also instates a defensive playstyle, which there's nothing wrong with trying to play defensive, but please understand that this game, if you don't play, you're not getting first in most cases. The other guys can beat themselves up. You could also get ganged up on, by the way, but which sucks. Getting all 3 players come after you sucks so bad. But if you're not playing in some fashion offensively, then you're kind of stuck. You're not getting first. Somebody else is going to get first, right? In most cases. Outside of that, though, gaining defense is very powerful as an effect. I don't want to downplay defense. It's really good. It's really, really good, especially as a second entire threshold you can use to eat attacks, right? That's what I mentioned with Blue Eyes. It's like I use that defense position sometimes to just have a monster eat an attack and destroy a monster. Literally. and then go to attack mode, so I don't have to deal with that and lose an attack. Like, there's strategies to defense. It's subpar. It's just, this is, and also this, again, entire deck, if you're going to build a deck around this character, is completely hard, and I mean hard countered by Red Dragon. So, like, stuff like that kind of happens. Firewall has a link summon condition. When summoned, gain the following effects depending on the number of link monsters or monsters with link arrows. Can be treated as 2 summon materials when used for a summon for a link monster. Pretty cool. On your field or in your graveyard. So a little bit more flexible than the pendulum. You grant, it's depending on how many you have. Depending on the number of monsters. Okay, if you have 1 monster, you get immunity to position changing. He certainly needs that. The defense at 0 is going to eat him alive. That's another thing, too, is monsters that have really low in 1 stat, there's position changing cards and effects and skills. Yeah, there's monsters that'll, like, say, oh, if you battle an attack position monster, change them to defense mode. Goodbye, Firewall Dragon, ordinarily, right? Yeah, so these are all for him. Okay. The first one is 1 super speed. No. Is that, and then the second one is 2. Okay. First one is the immunity. Second one, if you have 2 monsters, is 1 super speed. If you have 3 monsters, you get a second super speed, which is hyper speed. He's going to move so fast. And number 4, select one monster and return it to the hand. So this is not bad at all. This is really good. So you've got several things that some of the other monsters have. Wow, this guy seems extremely S tier. I've never used him. He's one of the ones I've never used. I've used almost all of them, and I don't think I've seen him either. This guy seems easily S tier. Depending on the number of link monsters. So the first thing about that is on your field or in your graveyard. Check. Don't have to be out there, like pendulums, for example. He gets immunity to changing. You need that. He's going to move across the board at basically the top speed possible. Amazing. Also, he has a board clear. He doesn't destroy the card. He forces it back to their hand. But so what? So what? You can get whatever pesky threat they've got off the board. This guy is awesome. Easily an S tier, in my opinion. Easily. So I have used Trickstar Holly Angel. She's got a snipe playstyle, which is just like burn damage. I already talked about burn damage. She deals it to all players. Like, so here's the deal. While in the field, don't love that already. 0 defense. Again, not great for position changes or whatever. She actually genuinely doesn't have defense because it's not even on the card. Snipe is your monster's snipe deal damage to all players. Snipe is just burn damage. So you'll burn damage to every player as opposed to the one directly ahead of you, 200. And then also you'll do 100 more. So you do 300 to everybody. It's not bad, but you'll get ran through quicker if your whole deck is, I tried it. Your whole deck is snipe, you'll get ran through. This is that type of effect that's good in like tag duels or whatever, where somebody else can be able to do more offensive things. But if you're trying to build a deck around her, you're going to get attacked and you're just not going to be able to sustain. Your monsters generally with the snipe effect aren't the crazy strongest. Like there's some decent ones like X-Head Cannon, stuff like that you can use, but not one I would recommend. All right, we're almost done, guys. 7 Road Magician. Gain 400 attack and defense for each time your monster has activated Inventor this duel. If the effect of your monster's Inventor has activated 4 times or more during this duel, it also gains 2 random immunity skills. So his deck is pretty insane. Inventor is a fun skill. It gives your monster a random other skill. Gains 1 skill at random, and 1 additional skill is gained if your monsters have activated Inventor 4 more times this duel. So for the first like 4 monsters, they're only going to gain 1, but after you've used that, they're going to start picking up 2 random skills. And then with him out there, he's gaining. Wait a minute. He gains 400 attack and defense for each time you had an Inventor used. If you use him after like 5 of those, my God. My God. And if the effect of your monsters have activated 4 more times, just like the effect itself, he also gains 2 random immunity skills. And immunity skills are going to be the immunity to position changes or destruction. So, yeah. So he himself, the thing about the deck is it has a high level of variance. It can either be really good or really basic or subpar, depending on what skills you're picking up. But when you start picking up skills and you drop this guy and he pops in with over 4,000 attack and immunity stuff, yeah, he's a monster. He's going to be a monster on that last turn or last couple turns, basically, because you need to, unless you've got Rush Recklessly, I guess, you need to play him a couple turns early. Yeah, very powerful. He feels like a monster that's like not S tier, but like extremely close. It just depends on the deck. Like I could easily see Inventor being the best deck in the game, just because of what's happening. But like what's happening is like the extreme variance, right? So the last one is Multistrike. We talked about him. If I were to choose again, I mean, you can pull these monsters later if that wasn't clear. You don't have to choose the right one here. You can choose whoever. If I were to choose to get again, I'd probably choose Red Dragon or Blue Eyes, personally. Those would be the ones. Red Dragon, Blue Eyes, Neos, Firewall. You know what? I'd probably choose Firewall. If I were to choose, I'd choose Firewall. He seems really, really good. But I was happy with Multistrike. It's just the issue with Multistrike is, like I said, you're going all in, but you'll get some really heavy hitters, man. So I am going to wrap there. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was 30 minutes. I certainly didn't intend for it to be this long. If you listened all the way through, you are the people YouTubers love the most. And I mean that seriously, because it helps us so much when you guys don't skip or leave the videos early. So thank you. Have an awesome day, and I'll see all of you next time.